My name is Rachel Doyle. I'm 35 years old, and 3 weeks ago I watched my 12-year-old niece stand at my son's birthday table, hold a bucket over his cake, and turn it over. That cake wasn't from a store. It was my late husband's recipe, the only chocolate cake my son has ever known, baked every June from a stained index card in his father's handwriting. And while frosting and mud slid off the edge of the table onto the grass, my sister stood 3 feet behind me and laughed. Nobody in that backyard expected what happened next. Not from me. I'm the quiet one. I'm the one who smooths things over. But that night, after the guests left and my son cried himself to sleep in the bathroom with the fan running so I wouldn't hear, I opened a laptop I'd been almost afraid to touch for 4 years. And by 6 the next morning, one email had told every adult in my family exactly what my kindness had been costing them and set in motion a phone call, a dinner, and a walkout that none of them saw coming. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you already know what it's like to be the reliable one. The one who pays quietly, who keeps the peace, who tells herself it's temporary. Stay with me, because this story isn't really about a cake. It's about the moment good people stop paying for other people's bad behavior. Welcome back. Subscribe if you haven't, because you're going to want to see how this one ends. Let me back up, because you need to understand who I was before the mud. I live outside Columbus, Ohio, in a small house with a yard just big enough for a folding table and a sprinkler. I'm an accountant. I run a 4-person bookkeeping firm, and for a living, I clean up other people's bad math. Numbers behave. People don't. 4 years ago, my husband Mark was killed by a driver who crossed the median on I-70. I became a widow with a 4-year-old the same afternoon. My son Theo is 8 now, quiet like his father, obsessed with dinosaurs, and every June we take down the same battered recipe box and bake the same cake his dad used to make. Mark's handwriting slants forward like he was always racing to get to the good part. Theo traces the letters while the oven heats. It's the closest thing to a hug his father can still give him. I tell you this because I want you to understand something about me before the rest of it. I am careful. I double-check invoices. I reconcile to the penny. In 8 years of running my firm, I have never once missed a filing deadline. But there was one account I never let myself look at closely. One column I built, one entry at a time, for 4 straight years, and never once let the cursor touch the bottom of. It started 3 weeks after the funeral, the way these things always do. Small. My sister Amanda mentioned that her daughter's club fees were going up, and wasn't it a shame that real talent might have to quit? I set up an autopay that night. Quiet as a heartbeat. I didn't know yet what that quiet would cost me. I didn't know that 4 years later, it would end with a bucket of mud, a spreadsheet I'd been afraid to finish, and an email sent at 6 in the morning that would change what my family was allowed to expect from me forever. That's where this starts. Let me tell you how we got there. Here's what nobody tells you about grief. It doesn't just take the person you loved. It makes you a soft target for a while, and if your family is used to asking you for things, that's exactly when they start. 3 weeks after Mark's funeral, it was the club fees. Then it was a phone. My niece Kaylee needed one for tournaments, so I added a line to my own family plan. $85 a month, quiet as a heartbeat. Then it was summer camp, because every serious junior player goes to camp. Then Amanda's car needed a new transmission, and she couldn't get Kaylee to practice without it, so I covered that too. Then groceries here, an electric bill there, always framed as a bridge to somewhere, never as what it actually was. My mother, Diane, called it family. I called it temporary. Temporary turned 4 years old. Here's the part that matters, so sit with it for a second. I'm an accountant. I saw every single charge leave my account. I built a spreadsheet myself the week after the funeral without even deciding to. My hands just do that. One tab, labeled family. Every payment logged with a date and a note, because that's how I'm built. But I never once let myself add the column up. Some numbers change what you're allowed to keep believing, and I needed to believe I was helping. I also need you to understand why I let it keep going. My parents picked Theo up from school every Tuesday during tax season. My mother kept a booster seat in the back of her car, just for him. Theo has no other grandparents, none on his father's side, no cousins on that branch at all. When your child's entire family tree fits on one limb, you pay to keep that limb green. I promise I'll tell you the number at the bottom of that column. I finally looked, but not yet. To explain what happened at that birthday party, I have to explain the sentence my family runs on, because I grew up inside it long before Kaylee did. My sister Amanda is 3 years older than me, and for almost a decade, she was the most important person at our dinner table. Junior tennis rankings, a coach who called her a comet, trophies lined up on the mantle like a stock portfolio. Then at 19, her shoulder gave out at a qualifier, and the comet landed behind a front desk answering phones part-time. She had Kaylee young, and Kaylee's father left before her daughter turned 5. Kaylee is 12 now, and here's the complicated part, she's actually good. Her serve is real. Her coaches aren't lying to be kind. Which made it very easy for my mother to say her favorite sentence again. She said it at Easter, holding up a tournament photo like it was a deed. This family invests in its stars. I grew up hearing that sentence. I knew exactly which side of it I was born on. I wasn't the star. I was the one who made her own dinner during tournament season and learned early that being low maintenance was the same thing as being loved. You can move out of a house like that. You can buy your own house 30 minutes away. The house you grew up in still gets a vote on how you live in the one you bought. Mine had been voting for 4 years, $85 and $650 at a time, and I hadn't even noticed I was still on its ballot. The Sunday before Theo's birthday, I got invited to dinner at my mother's, and the invitation should have come with a warning label. That's where the number finally showed up on paper. That's where I said no for the first time in 4 years. And that's where the countdown started. The pot roast was on the table when I noticed the brochure sitting next to the gravy boat, glossy and squared off at the corner like it had been placed there with a level. Meridian Tennis Academy. Full-time training. Elite pathway. $25,000 a year. My mother didn't slide it toward me until the plates were cleared, which is how I knew it was the entire reason for the meal. Kaylee needs this, she said. The club's taken her as far as it can. Amanda didn't bother with the pitch. She just leaned back, arms crossed, and said, "You have it. We both know you have it." And there it was, the family math, spoken out loud for the first time in 4 years instead of just implied through $85 a month and a transmission repair and 100 small transfers nobody ever called by their real name. I run a 4-person firm in a mid-sized city. I have a mortgage. I have a college fund for a boy whose father is gone and one income to cover the rest of both our lives. I looked at the brochure, and I looked at my mother, and for the first time since the funeral, I heard myself say it out loud. My answer is no. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list my reasons, because reasons are just handles for other people to grab and pull you back in by. The kitchen went so quiet I could hear the dishwasher change cycles. Amanda looked at me like I'd started speaking a language she'd never heard me use. And my mother didn't argue at all. She folded the brochure shut, patted it once like a well-behaved pet, and said, "We'll see. Here's something you should know about my mother if you don't already know a version of her. We'll see was never surrender." It was a countdown. The week that followed had a temperature to it. Texts that used to come with a heart emoji started arriving like meeting minutes. Amanda unfollowed me on everything, which at 38 is apparently how war gets declared now. My mother went with something older. On Tuesday, she sent me a photo of Kaylee mid-serve at the club, ponytail flying, with a caption underneath engineered in a lab specifically to hurt. She asks why Aunt Rachel doesn't believe in her. I read that in my office parking lot and sat there a long time, because here's the thing nobody warns you about saying no to your family for the first time. You don't feel powerful. You feel like you've broken a machine everyone else is still standing inside, and you can hear the gears grinding from every direction at once. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. I finally sent one line back that I loved Kaylee and my answer hadn't changed, and got a thumbs up emoji from my own mother. A thumbs up. That was the whole reply. That Thursday, I sat at my kitchen table and addressed birthday invitations by hand, dinosaur stickers on green envelopes, one for my parents, one for Amanda and Kaylee. Theo stood at my elbow supervising sticker placement, and he asked if Kaylee was coming for sure, because Kaylee was the only kid who ever played the games he invented without changing the rules halfway through. That's the sentence that actually got them invited, if I'm honest. Not the peace I was trying to keep with the adults. A boy who wanted his cousin at his party. I licked those envelopes myself and dropped them at the post office on my lunch break. I still think about that errand sometimes, late at night. How carefully I mailed the invitations to my son's worst day, with absolutely no idea that's what I was doing. Friday night, Theo and I baked the cake together the way we always do. I'll tell you about that night next, because you need to see exactly what was sitting on that refrigerator shelf before Saturday came for it. If you'd stood at my kitchen window Friday night, you'd have seen the whole ritual of it. The battered recipe box comes down from the top shelf. The card comes out, chocolate smudged in the corner from Mark's own thumb, his handwriting slanting forward like he was always racing toward the good part. Theo reads the steps out loud even though we both know them cold, because that's part of the deal too. 2 rounds, real butter. Frosting you have to stir until your arm complains. Mark used to say the arm ache was the secret ingredient, and Theo repeats that joke at the exact same moment every single year. I laugh like it's new because that's my half of the deal. While the layers cooled, Theo sat on the counter and asked me one of those questions kids keep in their back pocket for exactly the right quiet moment. Do you think Dad knows I'm 8 now? I told him I thought dads always know. He nodded, very serious, and piped the number 8 onto the cake himself, wobbly, proud, tongue between his teeth. We stood back and looked at it the way you'd admire a bridge you'd built together. Saturday's plan was simple and perfect, the way 8-year-old plans are. 6 friends from school, a dinosaur banner we'd painted ourselves, hot dogs, the sprinkler if it got hot, family arriving at 2, cake at 3. He taped the schedule to the fridge himself. Went to bed early without being asked, which is how you know a kid is excited. The cake sat overnight on the good glass stand in the center of the refrigerator, and I slept well. It was the last good sleep I'd get for a month. Saturday came in sunny and ordinary. By noon the backyard looked like a natural history museum with balloons. 6 kids from Theo's class arrived in a wave of gift bags, and for an hour my biggest problem was hot dog logistics. My family showed up at 2, right on schedule, which was my first clue something was off, because Amanda is never on time. She came through the gate in sunglasses she never took off, carrying a gift bag with the tag still attached. My father posted himself by the grill, where conversation can't quite reach a person. My mother arrived sweet. If you've ever had a mother like mine, you know exactly what that sentence means. She complimented my hair. She complimented the banner. She called the backyard charming, twice, the way a realtor does right before telling you what the house is actually worth. Kaylee drifted in last, earbuds in, and I remember thinking she looked less sulky than usual. She looked nervous. She kept orbiting the flower bed along the back fence, the one I'd watered that morning, where the soil goes dark and soft. At one point I looked up from the lemonade table and saw her at the fence with my mother, heads close together, my mother's hand smoothing her ponytail while she talked. Something pinged in me, low and quiet, like a smoke alarm chirping in another room. I ignored it. Hosting is the art of ignoring your own alarms. Around 2:30, Kaylee appeared at my elbow, polite as a hotel clerk, and asked what time we were cutting the cake. 3, I told her. She nodded and checked her watch. 12 years old, and she checked her watch. At 3 o'clock, I carried the cake out on the glass stand, and the whole backyard did that thing backyards do, everyone pulling in toward the table like a tide coming in. I lit the candles. I went inside for the camera. 15 seconds, maybe 20. That's exactly how long it took. When I came back outside, Kaylee was standing at the table holding the little blue bucket from beside the flower bed, the one I use for weeding, and it was full. I remember the details in that too bright way you remember accidents. Her knuckles pale on the handle. Her eyes flicking once, quick, to the back fence, to my mother, like a swimmer checking the lifeguard before going under. And I remember that she hesitated a full breath, maybe 2. 12 years old, standing between who she was and what she'd apparently been sent to do. Then she turned the bucket over. Mud came out in one gray-brown sheet across the frosting. Across the wobbly number 8 my son had piped with his tongue between his teeth, across 2 days of butter and arm-ache and a dead man's handwriting. The candles went out under it. One of them snapped. A little girl from Theo's class screamed, the short kind, more surprised than scared. And then the whole backyard went silent the way a theater goes silent. Theo didn't make a sound. That was the worst part. He just looked at the cake, and then at me, doing that math kids do, waiting for an adult to tell him exactly how bad this actually was. Into that silence, from 3 feet behind me, came one sound. My sister laughing. Head back, hand flat on her chest, sunglasses finally coming off so she could wipe her eyes. "Kids, right?" she said to the whole yard, inviting everyone to laugh along with her. Nobody joined her. One mother from Theo's class picked up her purse in slow motion. My father studied the grass like it owed him money. Kaylee stood frozen with the empty bucket, and the look on her face wasn't triumph. It was someone waiting to find out if a check had cleared. My mother stepped forward, looked at the ruined cake, looked at her grandson's white face, and delivered the line she'd apparently brought with her that afternoon. "It's just cake, Rachel. Don't make it a thing." I want to be honest about what happened inside me, because people imagine rage is hot. Mine wasn't. Mine came in cold, quiet, and extremely organized, like a filing system switching itself on. But first things first, and the first thing was 8 years old. I went to Theo, got down to his level, and told him we would fix this, that this was not how the day was going to end. He nodded, still silent, and let me steer him inside. Behind us, the party dissolved fast. Parents materialized next to their kids, thanking me too warmly, hurrying gift bags toward the gate. Within 20 minutes the backyard was empty except for a dinosaur banner and a cake full of garden soil. Here's what I did not do. I did not scream at my sister. I didn't say a single word to her, actually. I'm told by the one relative who still speaks to everyone that my silence scared her more than any screaming would have. That evening the house was too quiet. I scraped the ruined cake into the trash, washed the glass stand, and found Theo sitting cross-legged on his bed, holding the recipe box like it was a passport out of the day. He wasn't crying anymore. He'd done that in the bathroom with the fan on, because he's 8 and already thinks he has to protect me, which is a whole other conversation I have with the ceiling some nights. He looked up and said the thing I knew was coming. "It was Dad's cake, Mom. She put mud on Dad's cake. Not my cake. Dad's." And I heard myself doing what I always did so smoothly, so automatically it frightened me later. "It's okay, honey. Kaylee made a bad choice. We'll bake another one, bigger, this weekend." Smoothing it over. Prepaying everyone's consequences, the way I'd been doing for 4 years with checks and casseroles, and now with my own son's grief. Theo was quiet a minute, running his thumb along the dent in the box. Then, in the small, careful voice of a kid who isn't sure he's allowed to say something, he told me it hadn't looked like a choice exactly. I asked him what he meant. What he said next rearranged the next several weeks of my life. He'd gone to the fence to get the soccer ball, he said. Kaylee and Grandma were on the other side of the lilac bush, and Kaylee's voice was doing the thing he said sounded like when you have to go off the diving board and you don't want to. She said, "You promise I still get the phone?" Grandma said, "If you do it properly." Then Kaylee said, "He's just a little kid." And Grandma said, "Whose side are you on?" He came back with the ball and didn't tell me, because he thought maybe the phone thing was about chores. Chores. I sat on the edge of my son's bed and felt the whole room reorganize itself around those 4 lines, because look at what they actually mean. This wasn't a meltdown from a jealous kid. Not an impulse, not a sugar-fueled accident of childhood. There was an offer on the table before it ever happened. A negotiation. A price, a brand new phone, and a performance standard, do it properly, and a loyalty clause. Whose side are you on? My mother, who taught Sunday school for over a decade, stood at a fence and closed a deal with a 12-year-old to break an 8-year-old's heart over a loan I had every right to refuse. And my sister, whatever she knew in advance, watched the delivery, and laughed at the result. I tucked Theo in. I told him he'd done nothing wrong, that hearing something by accident is never spying, because I could see him worrying about that specifically. I kissed his forehead, closed his door, walked down my own stairs in the dark, and stood in my kitchen for a long moment. Adults had paid a child to break my child, and they had used my money to do it. It was almost 11 when I opened the laptop on the kitchen table. From the outside, it would have looked like nothing: a tired woman, a glowing screen, a cold cup of tea. On the screen, a spreadsheet named family. For years of my own handwriting in digital form, every row a date, an amount, a memo written in the hopeful shorthand of a woman trying to keep her family close. Club dues, June. Kaylee phone. Camp deposit. Transmission, don't mention. Groceries, mom's list. I had entered every line myself, and I had never once let the cursor touch the bottom of the column. That night, I scrolled all the way down, for years passing under my thumb like mile markers. And then I did the thing I'd been avoiding since the funeral flowers were still fresh. I clicked the empty cell at the bottom and hit sum. Just over $50,000. I sat back and let the number look at me. $650 a month for tennis dues, for years of them. 3 summers of camp at over $4,000 each. 2 years of a phone line. A transmission. A river of groceries and electric bills, while I drove a 9-year-old car and told Theo we'd see about hockey. And floating up out of the arithmetic came my mother's voice from that afternoon. "It's just cake, Rachel." I finally heard the sentence correctly. She was right. The cake was mud and flour, $30 of ingredients. What she actually meant was, you'll absorb this, like you absorb everything, because that's what you're for. Somewhere along the way, without a single conversation, I had stopped being family and become a funding source. Below that $50,000 total sat 2 more rows, dates in the future. The 2 biggest promises already bought, still waiting to happen. Unlit candles. I want to tell you exactly what I did next, line by line, because none of it was rage. It felt more like closing a client's books at year-end. People imagine revenge as noise, slammed doors, screaming matches, wine glasses against walls. Mine happened between 11:40 and 1 in the morning, in a silent kitchen, and the loudest sound in the whole thing was a mouse click. First, the trip. 6 people, 5 nights in Orlando that August, booked and paid on my card through a travel portal, $8,700, because my mother had told me family memories were priceless, and then let me price them anyway. The portal asked if I was sure I wanted to cancel. Software had more curiosity about my choices that night than my family had shown in 4 years. The $500 deposit was non-refundable, and I paid it gladly. Cheapest tuition of my life. Second, camp. Meridian Summer Intensive, $4,200, refundable minus a $250 fee with 21 days notice. I checked the calendar. 23 days. Even my collapse, apparently, was on schedule. Third, the club. I logged into my bank and switched off the autopay that had run like a heartbeat for 48 straight months. The button asked if I was sure. I have never been more sure of a button in my life. Fourth, the phone. The family plan was mine, my name, my bill. I opened the account and scheduled Kaylee's line to disconnect at the end of the billing cycle, 2 weeks out. Enough time for Amanda to port the number onto her own plan if she chose to pay for her own daughter's phone, which would have been a first. I want to be clear about what I felt, because honesty is the whole point of telling you this. It wasn't rage. It felt like closing a client's books at year-end, line by line, clean and final. I wasn't setting anything on fire. I was simply stopping payment on a lie. If you've ever sat up late at a kitchen table finally adding up what being the reliable one has cost you, how many years it took you to look, put the number in the comments. Mine was 4. And if this is landing anywhere close to home, subscribe, because what my family did once the money actually stopped is exactly where this story goes next. Back to my kitchen, 1 in the morning. The services were dead. The money was mine again. One thing left to do, the thing that would turn 4 private clicks into a fact everyone had to reckon with at once. I opened a blank email. Subject line, A full accounting. To Amanda. Copy to my parents. No one else, no aunts, no cousins, no audience. Because I wasn't performing. I was filing. It opened with the date and one sentence, that after what happened at Theo's party, I had reviewed 4 years of my support of this family, and the review was attached below. Then the table, every row from the spreadsheet, date, amount, memo, 48 months of club dues, 3 camps, the phone line, the transmission, the groceries, the light bills, subtotaled by year, totaled at the bottom. The same number that had been looking back at me across my kitchen. Just over $50,000. No commentary between the lines. Numbers don't need adjectives. That's exactly why people are afraid of them. Then the closing paragraph, which I drafted 11 times and had earned the right to send. Effective today, all of it ends. The Orlando trip is canceled. Camp is canceled. The club autopay is off. Kaylee's phone line ends with this billing cycle, and the number can be moved to your own plan if you'd like. My answer on the academy is still no. This is not a punishment. This is a closing statement. Accounts close when the terms are violated. And yesterday, at a child's birthday party, they were. I read it twice, changed nothing, and scheduled it to send at 6 in the morning. Then I closed the laptop, checked on Theo, and slept better than I had in 4 years. At 6 a.m., it went out. By 6:40, my phone was lighting up like a slot machine. I didn't answer the first call, or the second, or the 6th. I made pancakes. Theo and I had a sundae to repair and syrup outranks screaming. But voicemails pile up like snow, and by afternoon I had the whole morning reconstructed from my sister's messages, each one angrier and more useful than the last. Here's what happened in Amanda's kitchen, according to Amanda, who has never once in her life understood what she was confessing when she tells a story. Saturday evening, hours after the party, my mother had come by and given Kaylee the phone. The new one, the big camera, the works, bought on my mother's card, delivered on schedule, a reward for services rendered. Do it properly, and she had. So Sunday morning, Kaylee was leaning against the counter with her whole life already transferred onto this beautiful object when my email landed, and Amanda started reading it out loud. She got through the total, 50,000, and it produced only a scoff. Can you believe your aunt, tallying up gifts like some kind of accountant? It was the last paragraph that did it. Camp is canceled. Kaylee's line ends with the billing cycle. And my niece, holding the reward, learned in one sentence that the currency it had been paid in had just died. The phone slipped out of her hands. Hit the tile. Amanda said it made a sound like a windshield cracking. She was screaming at me about that sound. About the screen. About camp. About Orlando. About what kind of person emails a spreadsheet to her own family. I listened to all of it twice, and I noticed something specific. In 11 minutes of voicemail, my sister never once mentioned the cake. That told me exactly what was coming next. What came next was the family version of a press campaign, and my mother ran it like she'd been saving up for it her whole life. By Sunday afternoon, she was on my porch, arms folded, skipping past 4 years of my money to arrive directly at my cruelty. "You are punishing a child," she said. I had my answer ready this time because I'd had all night to close the books. "No, Mom. A child got punished the day you hired her. I paid for the party she was hired to ruin." Read the email again. She left without coffee, which in my mother's language is a declaration of war. By midweek, the extended family had the broadcast version, a bucket of mud shrunk down to a little spilled dirt, and $50,000 had vanished from the story entirely. My aunt texted me that family takes care of its own. A cousin I hear from at Christmas suggested I think about the stress Amanda was under. Nobody asked what had actually happened at the party. Nobody asked about Theo. I want you to notice what I didn't do that week, because it cost me something to hold. I didn't forward the email chain to anyone. I didn't post the spreadsheet. I had receipts, literal, itemized receipts, and an entire family jury pool ready to read them. And I let the broadcast version run unopposed, because the day you start prosecuting your case to cousins is the day you've joined the circus instead of leaving it. Then, 1 week after the party, my mother posted in the family group chat, "Dinner at my house Saturday. All of us. Time to heal this family." I already knew healing wasn't on the menu. They didn't wait for Saturday. Wednesday at 11, my office manager buzzed me to say my sister was in the lobby. My sister had brought reinforcements. Amanda walked in with Kaylee in front of her like a shield, still in her school clothes, and I understood immediately I was about to watch a play. We sat in my small conference room with the fake plant, and Amanda nodded at her daughter the way a director cues an actress. Kaylee folded her hands and recited it. "I am sorry my behavior at the party was inappropriate. I take full responsibility for my actions." Every sentence arrived sanded smooth. No mud in it. No cake, no fence. And after each line her eyes flicked sideways to her mother, checking whether it was landing. I've sat across from enough audited clients to know a prepared statement when I hear one. When she finished, Amanda spread her hands like a lawyer resting her case. "There. Now fix the camp thing." That little word, "thing," told me nothing had actually been understood at all. I came around the table and crouched down in front of my niece, eye level, the way I do with Theo. "Kaylee," I said, "you don't owe me a performance, sweetheart." "You never did." Something moved behind her face, fast, like a fish under ice. Then I stood and looked at my sister. "The answer is still no. It'll still be no on Saturday, too, so you can save the gas." Amanda gathered her purse with real ceremony and swept her daughter back out through my lobby. But Kaylee looked back at me through the glass door, one long look over her shoulder. It wasn't anger. It was a question. Thursday night my Aunt Carol called. My mother's younger sister, the one who moved estate over decades ago and got herself classified as difficult, which in my family just means she asks follow-up questions. "Well," she said, "somebody finally said it out loud." Then she gave me a history lesson I'd spent 30 years half knowing and carefully never assembling. "You think this started with Kaylee?" she said. "Honey, this is a rerun." She walked me through the years when every dollar in my parents' house was sorted by one rule: coaches in 3 cities, motel weekends for tournaments, entry fees stacked up past the mortgage payment. And when the money got tight, the account that got quietly emptied without a family meeting was the one with my name on it. My college fund. I'd known it was gone at 17, told with a shrug that I was the resourceful one and I'd land fine. What I'd never let myself see clearly was the wording underneath the shrug. "This family invests in its stars." Meaning, the other child pays her share in service. I put myself through college on scholarships and 2 jobs, and I called that independence for 20 years, because that word kept me upright. Carol's voice went gentle. "You weren't the daughter, honey," she said. "You were the revenue." After we hung up, I sat in the dark and did the thing I do. I ran the numbers on my sister instead. Amanda was 19 when the shoulder ended it, and nobody ever taught her a plan B. She wasn't the author of this system. She was its first casualty. That thought scared me more than my anger had all week. Friday at 1 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I let it go to voicemail. In the morning, I listened to my sister's voice without any of its armor on. I want to give you the voicemail the way I heard it, because for about 90 seconds, my sister told the truth. "I was 19, she said, when they told me the money was gone. All of it. Mine, yours, everything gone into my shoulder, and my shoulder was garbage now." So, what was I supposed to be? Nobody ever taught me how to be a person who pays for things, Rachel. They taught me how to be paid for. You learned checkbooks. I learned applause. And applause doesn't refill. There was a long pause. 10 seconds of my sister breathing. I stood at my kitchen sink and listened to it, and I cried once, quietly, for the 19-year-old on the other end of 20 years. Then she inhaled and finished the message, and the window closed like weather. "So you have to fix the camp thing," she said, her voice hardening back into its familiar shape. "You owe Kaylee that. You're the one who can, so you're the one who has to. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked." I saved the voicemail. I listened to it twice more that day, both halves, the drowning part and the grabbing at me part. I understood my sister completely for the first time in my life. She'd been going under long before Kaylee was even born. but you can't save someone whose plan is to pull your child under with her. Here's what nobody puts in the brochure about setting a boundary with your own family. The invoice arrives immediately, and it isn't itemized. That week, the small kindnesses that make up a life quietly stopped. A neighbor who'd waved at me for years found her mailbox suddenly fascinating when I drove past because she'd heard the church version of the story, the one where I abandoned my family over a little spilled dirt. The Tuesday pickup my parents had handled since the funeral evaporated without a text. I rearranged my client meetings and hired a sitter for after-school hours and paid her a fair wage, which I noted grimly was still cheaper than the old arrangement had ever been. But the bill that actually hurt landed at bedtime Thursday, when Theo looked up from his dinosaur book and asked, "Are we not going to Grandma's anymore?" I gave him the 8-year-old true version, the one I'd rehearsed in the shower like a coward. Grandma and I disagreed about something important. Grown-ups sometimes need space to think. None of it was his fault or Kaylee's. He took it in, nodded, and said, "Okay." Then, at the door, the follow-up he'd been holding on to. "Is it because of my party?" I told him the truest thing I said all month. That his party was where I finally woke up, and that was the exact opposite of his fault. Friday at noon, the day before the dinner, my father showed up at my office. Alone. I can't overstate how strange that sentence is. My father does not go places alone. He's a man who's spent 40 years positioned carefully out of the crossfire, at grills, in garages, behind newspapers. He sat across my desk holding his cap in both hands like a man at a hearing, and he told me 3 things. First, the phone, it was my mother's idea, her card, bought Thursday, before the party had even happened. Amanda knew by Friday. "I told your mother it was wrong," he said. I told her quiet. He looked at his hands. Quiet never stopped your mother once in 40 years. Second, the thing he'd apparently been carrying since I was 17. "We spent your college money and called it family strategy," he said. "I watched you carry 2 jobs through school and told myself, she's tough, she'll land." He made himself look at me. "I've been ashamed since before you even knew, Rachel. I'm not asking you to fix that. There's no fixing that." Then the third thing, the one I didn't see coming. I braced for the pitch. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "Don't you come to that table and pay. If you pay again, it never ends. It just changes shape. I'm 66 years old, and I know exactly what I bought with my quiet. Don't you buy it too?" Then he stood, put his cap back on, and left through my lobby. My quietest parent had just told me to stand. Now I had to find out if I actually could. My mother called Friday evening to confirm dinner, using her treasurer voice, the one with the agenda paper clipped behind it. 6 o'clock, pot roast. Everyone will be there. "And here," she said, "is what's going to happen. We are going to put this ugliness behind us. You'll reinstate the camp. Kaylee shouldn't lose her summer over a squabble between adults. You'll rebook the trip. The whole family's been looking forward to it. And we can discuss the academy calmly, like a family, after everyone's eaten. Then all of this is forgotten, sweetheart. Clean slate." I said nothing, which she took as progress. So she laid the last card down with the gentleness of a woman who has been closing deals at kitchen tables for 40 years. "Or don't come," she said. "And if that's your choice, don't come at Christmas either. I won't have you at my table part-time." There it was. Terms and conditions. Love as a subscription service. My seat at the family table, listed at its actual price for the first time, somewhere around $13,000 a year, plus a $25,000 balloon payment, renewable annually, forever. What she was offering was everything I'd been terrified of losing since the funeral. Grandparents for Theo. Christmas mornings with cousins. The photograph of a whole family, everyone still in the frame. All of it back tomorrow, for the standard fee. She hung up before I could answer. My mother always hangs up first. It's how she keeps the last word on layaway. I stood in my kitchen holding a dead phone, and across the room, on the refrigerator, Theo's birthday schedule was still taped up. Hot dogs, sprinkler, family at 2, cake at 3. Next to that fridge, I'd already canceled $50,000 of make-believe. I had one night left to decide which woman was walking into that dinner. I'm going to tell you the part I'm least proud of, because you've stayed with me this long and you've earned the whole ledger. Friday night, close to midnight, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the camp portal. My cursor sat on the reinstate button for a long time. My reason scrolled by like fine print nobody reads. Kaylee didn't design the deal. 12-year-olds take the currency that's offered. That's what childhood is. She was good, actually good, and her summer was about to become the ash of a war she didn't start. One click for $1,200, and at least one child comes out of this hole. That's how it always starts, isn't it? One click for the child. Then a floorboard creaked, and Theo patted in for a glass of water, saw the screen over my shoulder, and read the logo out loud. He didn't say anything at first, just filled his cup, drank half, and asked in the flat, careful voice he uses when he already suspects the answer. Is that for Kaylee? Are you buying them back? 8 years old, asking me that. I looked at my son, who 2 weeks earlier had watched a girl wearing his cousin's face destroy his father's cake, and who was now watching his mother hover over the checkout button of the exact machine that had paid for it. And I heard the answer come out of me before I'd finished thinking it, quiet, like a fact. Love isn't an invoice, buddy. Nobody gets to bill you for it, and you can't buy it back with camp. He nodded, unimpressed, the way kids nod at things that are simply true, and went back to bed. I closed the laptop. Saturday evening, I put on the gray dress I wear for closing difficult accounts, and I drove to my mother's house. Not to pay. To settle. My mother's house smelled like pot roast and ambush. The good tablecloth was out, the one that appears for funerals, graduations, and sieges, and the table had been set with intent. Amanda was already seated, sunglasses retired, wearing the expression of a woman who's been told the check is coming. Kaylee had been placed in the chair directly beside mine, which no one in that house does by accident. My Aunt Carol had been invited too, and she shot me a look across the room that said, I'm here as a witness. Order whatever you want. My father stood by the window, cap off, present in a way I couldn't remember him being at that table before. Theo was home with a sitter, a decision that took me about 4 seconds. That table had never once been safe for children. It had only ever been safe for invoices. I sat down. I complimented the roast. My mother served everyone herself, orchestrating, radiating the terrible warmth she produces on days she expects to win. Beside her plate, face down but present, sat the Meridian brochure, like a contract waiting for dessert. Small talk got performed. Carol's tomatoes got discussed at generous length. Everyone was very grateful for the tomatoes. Under all of it, one man's silence had changed frequency, my father, watching me instead of the grass, for what might have been the first time in my adult life. Then my mother folded her napkin, tapped it twice against the tablecloth, and said grace a second time, though we'd already finished eating her own invention, thanking God for family, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Amen went around the table like a signature loop. Then she reached for the brochure. She opened it flat between the serving dishes and smoothed the crease with her thumb, and addressed the table like the chair of a board recognizing old business. We are prepared to put this behind us, she said. We, as though the whole family were affirming shares. Here is what reasonable looks like. Camp reinstated by Monday, that poor child's summer is hanging by a thread. The trip rebooked, deposits are only money. And then we'll discuss Meridian like a family. Calmly. No more emails. She said emails the way other people say infestations. Then she nodded at Amanda, and I watched my sister receive the same cue her daughter had received in my conference room, and deliver the adult version of the same recital. I'm sorry things got out of hand at the party, she said, to a point on the wall just above my head. Emotions were running high. We all could have handled things better. I counted the missing words while she talked. Mud missing. Cake missing. Paid missing. Promised missing. Phone missing. Mark missing. It was an apology with the serial numbers filed off. When it was over, she looked, on reflex, at our mother and got the small, approving nod. Something in my chest went very still and very clear, like water finally freezing all the way through. My mother turned back to me and spread her hands open above the brochure. So, sweetheart, she said. Are we a family, or aren't we? Every face at the table turned to me. Even the pot roast seemed to wait. I put down my fork. I want to answer that honestly, Mom. So I'm going to need you to hear the whole answer. For 4 years, I told them, since the week we buried Mark, I had put just over $50,000 into this family. Tennis, camps, a phone, a transmission, groceries, light bills. I never asked for thanks for me, it was love. Then 3 weeks ago I said no, one time, to one thing. And within 7 days, a 12-year-old was offered a phone to walk across a birthday party and dump mud on a dead man's cake in front of his son. I turned to Kaylee, because this part belonged to her. None of this is your fault, I said gently, looking right at her. Not the party, not the phone, not this dinner. Adults built this whole machine, sweetheart. Adults handed you the bucket. My door will be open to you every day of your life. My wallet won't be. You'll understand the difference someday, and I hope it costs you a lot less to learn than it cost me. Then I turned back to my mother, who had already begun, at volume, the speech about everything this family had done. I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't look away. Mom, I said, I finally closed out the account this spring. Here's the audit. I wasn't a daughter to you. I was a bank. And the bank is closed. Amanda's chair scraped back. You owe us, she said, the crack from the voicemail back in her voice. You're the one who can, so you're the one who has to. I took a folded note from my purse and set it beside her plate, a name and a phone number in my own handwriting. One of my clients needs a full-time office manager, I said. Real salary, real insurance. I already told her about you, the shoulder, all of it. She wants to meet you Tuesday. That's what I had left to give my sister. A door instead of a check. My mother stood. If you walk out now, don't you walk back in at Christmas. I picked up my purse and paid the price of the next sentence anyway. You were right at the party, Mom. It was just cake. It was never about the cake. I thanked my father for dinner, and I walked out of my childhood home, past the graduation photos and the trophy shelf, through the front door, and the screen door clicked shut behind me. Softest sound I ever heard. Loudest thing I ever did. I made it 2 blocks before I had to pull over on a side street under a streetlight because my hands had started shaking on the wheel like they'd been saving it up. I cried for about 10 minutes, the ugly kind, forehead on my knuckles, hazards ticking. I want to be precise about those tears, because precision is what I have instead of poetry. I wasn't crying for the family I'd just lost at that table. I was crying for the family I'd spent 4 years trying to buy. The one made of autopays and swallowed words and a seat I kept renting at full price. That family had never existed, and it was never going to, at any price. Some part of me had known that the whole time and kept paying anyway, the way you keep watering a plastic plant, because the watering is the only part that ever felt like yours. Grief and relief came out in the same breath. It turns out they share a checkbook, and both of them were finally settling up. Then I drove home to the family that actually did exist. Theo was on the couch in his pajamas with the sitter, and he looked up when I came in and read my face with that terrible 8-year-old accuracy kids have. We sent the sitter home and ate cereal at 9 at night, the two of us, at the kitchen table where all of this had been decided. It was the best dinner I had all month. 3 days later my phone buzzed. Amanda. I braced for it, and then I read it. Did you mean it? The job. I typed back my client's name and number, nothing else, and hit send before I could add a lecture on top of it. Some doors you just hold open. You don't narrate them. Here's the accounting 90 days out, because I know some of you want the numbers, and I'm the woman who will always give them to you. Amanda took the job. Office manager, full-time, real paycheck, the first one of her adult life that didn't run through our mother's mythology. She never thanked me, which was honestly correct. Thanks would have made it a favor, and favors were the old currency. She just showed up on time, every day, and kept showing up. Kaylee kept her phone, the screen fixed on Amanda's dime. She plays at the community courts now, and her mother sits through every practice, because it turns out watching is free. My mother kept her word with the same discipline she brings to everything. Silence, total, curated. Christmas will have an empty chair where the checkbook used to sit, and I'd be lying if I said that doesn't make it odd hours. The system I grew up under didn't die at that table. It just lost its last paying customer. My father shows up at my house every single Tuesday at 3 to pick Theo up from school. His own idea, his own gas. Tuesdays, he told me, cap in hand on my porch, are ours. The old club auto pay is still $650 a month. It just goes into Theo's college fund now. Same amount, different future. 2 weeks after that dinner, on an ordinary Saturday, we threw the do-over party. Same backyard, same dinosaur banner, patched with tape where June had worn through it. 6 kids, hot dogs, the sprinkler going by 2. Theo and I baked the cake together Friday night, the box down from the shelf, Mark's handwriting still racing uphill toward the good part. This one came out a little lopsided, leaning gently to the left, like it was listening to something. Theo piped the 8 himself again, steadier this time, and declared that the lean made it aerodynamic. Nobody at that party had been paid to be there. You could taste it in the frosting. In October, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. My name, in careful, round 12-year-old handwriting. Inside was a drawing, 2 kids at a table, a cake between them with 8 crooked candles, and underneath, in pencil pressed hard enough to groove the paper, I'm sorry about the cake. For real. Nobody paid me to say that. I stood at my mailbox on a Tuesday and read that last line 4 times. Then I wrote back 1 sentence and mailed it the next morning. I know, sweetheart. That's exactly how I can tell it's true. Here's what 4 years and $50,000 finally taught me, and I'll leave you with just this 1 sentence, because it's the only one that matters. Love isn't an invoice. And the moment somebody hands you a bill for it, what you're holding isn't love anymore. It's rent. That's my story. 1 bucket of mud, 1 spreadsheet, 1 quiet dinner where I stopped paying rent on my own family. If any part of this reminded you of an account you've been afraid to add up, take it as your sign. If you know a woman who's been the family bank too long, share this with her. I'll see you in the next one.